What's up, Good Follow? This is Roz, and we have an exclusive sit-down interview with the new head coach of the Indiana Fever. She was the 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, an NCAA champion, a baller herself, a WNBA champion, and my former broadcasting teammate. What's up,
That's right.
Stephanie
What's
White?
going on? How are you?
I'm good. It's so great to have you on the show, Steph, and that you made the time. I'm sure you have a million things going on.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. I was, looking up all of your history and stories, and I'm like, this is a real indie gal. Like born in Indiana, you played your college ball in Indiana at Purdue, you played for the Fever in the WNBA along other stops. In coaching, you actually were an assistant coach with the Fever, and now here you are back as the head coach of the Indiana Fever. Just how has Indiana shaped you and just been a backdrop for you over the course of your life story?
Yeah, it's interesting because people, when they ask about my background, I consider myself a community project. I grew up in a very small town in the state of Indiana. And of course, anybody who knows basketball knows the rich history of basketball in the state of Indiana. And typically that works through the cornfields, right? So it's country and it's basketball. And that's really how I grew up. And I grew up in a small community. No stoplights in our entire county, right? Everybody in our county went to one high school. And growing up in that area, it was thought at the time that no one from a small school would get a college scholarship offer. I wasn't going to be able to do that unless I moved to the city or I moved to, a bigger school. And everyone in my community was dead set on helping me accomplish my goals, whether that was from the time I was 10 years old playing with the guys who I called the old men in our town who played on Sundays and Wednesdays, who were probably in their 30s, maybe at the time, allowing me to play with them and really trying to teach me the game to, when we couldn't afford to send me to AAU national tournaments, that our community got behind that and had fundraisers and helped me, get to the point where I could be seen by college coaches. I mean, remember, that was a long, long time ago. So no social media, right? Like very little television, no internet, none of that stuff. It was, you go to a couple of tournaments a year that college coaches are there. You go to one AAU national tournament, the college coaches are there, and that's how you get seen. And so I do feel like I was a community project. And so from Indiana, being able to continue my career in college and the WNBA in Indiana, it's just in my blood. It's in my blood. It's who I am. And so the opportunity for me to be able to come home, and I really, mean that. It's not just a phrase to me, to come home. I didn't know that, I didn't think that would happen. And so the ability for that to happen and the opportunity that presented itself, it was too good to be true.
This is a true homecoming in
Yes.
every way of it. And like, not to continue to use cliches, but it took a village, you
Yes.
know? And it says a lot about you that like pretty much what you said was, the whole hood, everybody
Yeah.
believed in you.
Exactly.
We was like, we're gonna get Steph to her dreams. And you've absolutely done that as a player, as a coach. And you've been already a part of history with the Indiana Fever franchise and organization. Before we talk about the present, I want to look at history because you actually overlapped as a player with the great Hall of Famer Tamika Catchings, and as a coach, you were on the staff when that team won the WNBA championship, the only one in Fever history. So, let's start with Tamika Catchings.
Mhm.
Just like, how did she influence the way you see the game and impact this franchise and set a tone for it?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Tamika when she was drafted, I don't know if you recall when she was drafted, she was injured. She had hurt her knee. She was not going to play her rookie year. And I was a part of the team at that time. Tamika and I were roommates a lot on the road. And I remember she didn't say a lot, right? She didn't talk a lot. She wasn't playing. She wasn't actively involved in practice every day. But when we didn't win a lot, right? Like we were an expansion team. We didn't win a lot. Um, but she still had this competitive fire. And so when she did speak in the locker room, whether it was about our habits or about the way we were approaching games, or like, and she was not used to losing, right? She was used to winning. It said a lot to me about the type of, number one, player and person and competitor that she was, but number two, leader she was going to be, that she was not actively involved in playing or participating at that time. but she was actively involved in where we were going to be and how we were going to go about our business on a daily basis. And I loved that about her. You know, and that's who she is. Ultimately, that's who she is. And I remember as a teammate, you know, Tamika sets the standard because she works in practice the way that she plays, and which is all out every day.
And a terror, historic terror on
Yes.
defense, you know? But I think it's cool that you got to see two perspectives of her,
Mhm.
like her early in her career and then later as a coach, you know, her fully blossomed as a player. And, you know, you've got an interesting roster that you're heading into as the head coach, and we like focus in on the now for the Indiana Fever. You've got a unique locker room. It is undoubtedly super talented, but it's such a mashup of unique personalities, and I'll also say established
Mhm.
storylines for each of these players. Like there aren't some players that like haven't figured out what they're about, or like the storyline hasn't been created for them in the W. And you've got all of this coming into your locker room. So, you know, season's on the way. What are going to be your first priorities, maybe even exercises in creating
Mhm.
common ground and meshing this team?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the early conversations, you know, for us as a coaching staff has just been about connection and building relationship, and you know, approaching the players who were in that locker room a year ago in hey, like, you know, what is it that you want to accomplish? You know, you don't do you what is it that we can help you? Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And most of those
Mhm.
guys were pretty young. Certainly pretty young in terms of playoff experience. And then approaching them in sort of a self scout way, like, this is what we would do to you when we played you. So these are the things that we want to work on. So first establishing with those players that had been here, and then continuing to work on our communication and relationship building, because we know at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter what you know, you know, if you don't have connection, if you don't build relationship, and if you don't build trust. And so we've really started from a foundational level of that. And then it was really important who we added in free agency and in the offseason fit who we already had. I mean, look, our big three with Caitlin and Kelsey and Aliyah, like, you got to have certain kinds of vets that fit around them. That, number one, fill the gaps that we need in our lineups, in our rosters. But number two, have accomplished you know, multiple things that can lead them in a way that they haven't been led before, but also understand where they fit in the scope of what the Indiana Fever is about now and what we're about in the future, and that give us a chance to compete for championships. And I think that Amber and Kelly did an outstanding job. I mean,
They
certainly,
crushed it.
I mean, they crushed it. They did. You know, you think about bringing in Natasha Howard, who was drafted by the Indiana Fever when I was an assistant coach, was traded by the Indiana Fever when I was the head coach, just went out and won multiple championships after that, you know,
You
continued to
got
become,
winners.
absolutely, to continue to become one of the greatest players in the history of our league, played every different kind of role, is soft spoken. So when she speaks, you listen because it matters, right? Gives us a little bit different look at that position than we've had before. DeWanna Bonner, who, again, winner, right, has won at every level, competed and
Yeah.
won for a championship in Phoenix. You know, competed for championships with us in Connecticut. Versatility, which is critical for our system and what we want. Ultra competitive, and but also like a mother hen, right? So can be that
Mhm.
one that can like push you and challenge you, but also like embrace you and hug you and help you understand all the things that go along with the ups and downs and the long season that we have, this sprint marathon of a season. You know, and can knock down a shot, can spread the floor, can do all the things that we need to do. You know, Sydney Colson, a backup point
Yeah.
guard, was really important for us. Again, a winner
Yeah.
at every level,
And
different kind
vibes.
and vibes and different kind of leadership, like not
Yeah.
afraid to speak her mind, like has
Yeah.
been through the rigor and the battles, has played, has not played, has been in rotation, has not been in rotation, was called upon when Chelsea Gray goes down with injury in the finals, and ultimately helps them win the series after not
Mhm.
having played a lot throughout the course of the season. So has played various roles and understands, you know, how important it is to stay ready. Is one of those players who can nip things in the bud in the locker room without it having to get to us as coaches. Builds our depth on the perimeter, allows us a little bit more versatility with Caitlin and Kelsey and what we do with them. Really important to get somebody of her caliber. You know, certainly for us, Sophie Cunningham,
Yeah.
toughness, right?
Tough.
Winner,
Winner. Yep.
ability to play multiple positions, plays with has played with tough competitors. I mean, was essentially mentored by the all-time greatest in Diana Taurasi, right? So now
Yep.
she can be that mentor. She can
Mhm.
be that player who comes in and brings us that toughness and that swag, yet keeps our versatility. Can knock down shots, which shot making is so important, for us, and
Yeah.
take some pressure off of our big three because all of these other guys can do their own thing, right? But when they fit with what we have, I think it makes us really, really dangerous. Plus, all of those players are going to help us on the defensive end of the floor, which has been our greatest deficiency. And
Yeah.
and so I think that having veteran players who understand what it is to be a part of this organization, who are not afraid of all of the things that come with being a part of the Indiana Fever, and who ultimately, at the end of the day, are great teammates, great people, and just want to win.
That is a great walk through all of the additions, all of the star power, and muscle that you have joining the
Mm-hmm.
team this season. And you mentioned the big three. I'll guide you through it.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about them. Let's start with Caitlin Clark. You have a generational talent. Sometimes that word is thrown around, but I think it's really fitting here for Caitlin and her talent and her potential at the point guard position. So Caitlin Clark was on an alternate broadcast with Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird. And one of my favorite parts of it, so she's got a goal and she wants to have less technical fouls.
That's a good goal.
And she plays with such passion and fire. And of course, sometimes that spills over and sometimes that can, show very visibly, but a lot of times the passion is good. So like, what's your immediate reaction to that?
Did Diana give her any advice?
I think they were bragging on the types of texts they all got.
I'm sure they were. I think my initial reaction is look, like, momentum changing technicals we can't have. The unnecessary ones, like, we can't have. Having conversations about what it means to show your fire, and like, you don't want to take any of that away because that's what makes her special, right? But to channel some of that, in a way that may not hinder our team. The margin for error in this league to win a championship is so small. And if one technical in a game changes the momentum and causes you to lose it, that's big. So when we get them, the timeliness of them, the ones that happen, in a heat of the moment, competitive, whatever. Okay, like, yeah, we live with those. It's the nagging ones, right? Like getting on the official and continuing to nag and nag and nag. Like, that's my job. Right,
Yeah.
that's my job. So I think for me, it's helping her navigate the when to do it and when not to. Helping her maintain a constructive channel for a lot of that competitive spirit. And I think it's important for Caitlin to utilize Tamika Catchings, because Catch was the same way. Like, oftentimes our greatest strength can sometimes be our greatest weakness, right? That fiery, competitive, like, is the reason that you're so successful. But sometimes it can hurt depending upon the timing of it. And so I think Catch is a great resource for that too. I think just being honest with her about, like, certain times, like, yo, it's time to kind of chill, or hey, yeah, go ahead, or I'll get this one, right? Like, I
Yeah.
get this one. Having those conversations. You don't want to stifle the things that make her great. But you also have to take into consideration all of the things that go into the ultimate opportunities for success for your team.
Mhm. I think this is why it's so great that you're coach here, because as a broadcaster covering you as a coach, players have often said you're a player's coach. And like, I feel like this is one of those moments where like you've got a good feel for
Mm-hmm.
it in working with her. Okay, so besides this decreasing text, we already know that Caitlin has put on some strength and muscle. She had that viral picture.
Yeah, you saw that. Yeah,
I saw it.
I asked her if it was photoshopped.
She said it was AI. No, but we know she's putting work in in the weight room. But besides those two things, like, what aspects of her game would you like to work with her on for this season?
Yeah, I mean, certainly getting stronger was one. The level of physicality in the W is totally different. That's the way that teams have to try to keep her off balance, keeping a low center of gravity. There are times where she plays a little bit upright, making sure core strength and her ability to move with time under tension and stay in a low center of gravity is important. Lateral movement, like, one of the challenges that we're coming to her with right away is on the defensive end of the floor. No, use your size, use your length. You've got to that's got to be a priority, right? That's got to be a priority to play both ends, because we don't have to go from 11 or 12 to 1 or 2, but we got to get to middle of the pack. I think from just a straight basketball perspective, making sure that we help her diversify, her finishing ability, diversify in the way that it's not predictable, to be able to be equal in terms of production and facilitation, going right and left, to be able to have different types of finishing looks, whether it's crossbody finishes, whether it's floaters at the rim, whether it's quick floaters, long floaters, Euros. You can't quite be as fundamentally predictable with as much athleticism, speed, quickness, and as much as the game plan is going to be geared toward her. And then I think the challenge for us as coaches is how do we get a rest when she's on the floor while she's playing, right? Like while she's on the floor. And some of that's going to be playing off ball, utilize her as a screener, getting her into action on the third and fourth side instead of the first and second, where it's easy to game plan against. Now, how we use her to help everybody else be better off the ball. We know how great she is with the ball in her hands. We're not going to take that away, but we've got to be able to diversify a bit in how we use her. So from those kind of challenges as well. I mean, we've got like a short-term kind of list and we got a long-term kind of list, but Caitlin, I remember from the very first day when we were working on balance and we were working on footwork and we were looking at all those things, from day one to day two, she had it.
Wow.
Like she's a perfectionist and she wants it and she's going to work on it. So that long list might get shorter every day. Every day we're in practice.
Another part of the list too takes a look at Aliyah Boston, because that two-player game between Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston, by the end of the season, Steph, it really had a lot of growth and rhythm and flow to it. So what do you envision, that part of the game, especially Aliyah Boston here in year 2 of them together?
Yeah, I think number one, yes, you're absolutely right. I love the way that they work together in the two-man game. They got so good at reading one another. I think Aliyah is an outstanding facilitator as well from that post position. So we're going to use her a little bit more like a hub, right? Like a little bit more like a Jokic in how she gets the ball, and whether that's in the trail, in a lot of our stuff in flow, or whether that's on the block. I don't want her to have to work as hard, like one-on-one. I don't want her to have to just, pound and body and dribble in a one-on-one situation to get shots. We want to make her life easier. How can we get her touches at the rim where she can just go right into her finishes? How can we get her touches off the block where then we can run off-ball action and she can be a facilitator? Then she can get into other actions that allow her to move after she's gotten rid of it to get some easy buckets, as opposed to just everybody knows a strong side pick and roll is coming. So a little bit more movement, a little bit more usage in her in terms of facilitating, and a little bit more versatility in her game. I mean, challenging her to become a consistent, doesn't have to be high volume, but a consistent 3-point shooter, like looking for those, being able to use other aspects of her game outside of just pounding with her back to the basket.
If I'm Aliyah Boston and I happen to be watching Good Follow Show and watching this interview, I would be so excited to hear all of like the accountability and opportunity you're giving her to potentially grow into. There is nothing like a facilitating big. But let me take you to Kelsey Mitchell, who is 29, I believe. So we are talking about prime years right now. Okay, what's next level for her? Because we know she is a bucket, a bucket, a bucket.
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey was our number one priority in free agency, making sure that we're re-signing her, making sure that she understands how important she is to everything that we are going to do. She is the probably the one person on our roster that can just get a bucket, doesn't need any help. Right. I think our ability as a staff to move her around and utilize her strengths and her ability to get downhill. She doesn't need a screen, right? She doesn't need the two-man. The ability to get downhill, the ability to use her in 2 or 3 actions to get her wide open looks, to use her speed in the open floor, to put her in positions. I thought last year, and you look at her numbers, it was the most efficient year that she's had. Less shots, most efficient. Right. All-star performance, she's an all-league performer in my mind, no doubt about it. But I think our system and the way that we can continue to play to her strengths and put her in positions for success, I think it's going to be really good. We're going to free her up to just play. We're gonna use her and Caitlin and a lot of stuff together. We're gonna use them as screeners and a lot of action to then open them up. I mean, we all know, everybody knows, if you're a great scorer, if you can be a great screener, you're gonna get a lot more shots. You know, and then
Right.
we're gonna put her in position to do what she does best and break down the defense. And we're gonna have other action to where it's not like, here you go, Kelsey, you got to make a play, and then we're just watching, right? So we're gonna give her multiple options in that action. You know, and then I think she can be a real key for us on the defensive end of the floor. She's been relied upon so heavily offensively in her time in Indiana, and of course, you know, had the most talent that she's ever had around her a year ago, and I think this year will be even more so. So take some pressure off of her to feel the burden of having to make the play. But also, I think she's going to get more wide open looks than she's ever gotten before because of who we have on the floor and because of their ability to space the floor.
I mean, we're already talking about an all-star in Kelsey Mitchell, but
Yep.
like an even further breakout season. How exciting. You know, and you keep talking about defense too. So I'm gonna be looking for the growth and the jump
Yes,
there.
we got to grow.
I'm gonna get you out on this one. This is just like a bigger picture way of looking at this upcoming season because last year, the Indiana Fever and quite frankly, Caitlin Clark saw unprecedented levels of attention, you know, and that meant coverage, fandom, and sometimes it could be hard on the players, even
Mhm.
toxic. So I want to just understand, like, I'm sure you had to have given some thought to this and stepping into this unique position on your philosophy of protecting your players and also even players of other teams from toxic treatment, toxic coverage, things that may be hurtful for them. As players last season did raise their hand and say, this was a lot.
Yeah. No, you know, I think number one, we got to be vocal about what's acceptable and what's not. Doesn't mean that people are going to change. I think we've all been online enough to know that there's a lot of hate out there. There's a lot of vitriol out there. But I also think we have to step back and look at you know, I think that there are people and there are, you know, a lot of different algorithms out there that are specifically using whether it's Caitlin Clark, whether it's the Indiana Fever or the WNBA in general, to further these hateful narratives that aren't WNBA fans, that aren't Indiana Fever fans, that aren't Caitlin Clark fans, to be quite honest. You know, utilizing that. So I think number one, you know, for our team, our challenge is going to be what do we allow inside the building, right? What do we allow inside the locker room? Like we've got to be very protective of our space. We got to be very protective of our team. If you don't have the ability to shut it down, then we have and utilize the resource to be able to keep it on the outside, right? We cannot allow that to infiltrate our building. And then on a global scale, you know, I think for us as a staff, as an organization, as a league, we have to continue to be vocal about what is expected, what is accepted, and what is not. There is no place for the hate, the vitriol, the language, you know, the narratives that have been spewed upon the WNBA from last season to this season. And look, part of being a great league, and you know, our male counterparts have seen this as well. Some of it comes with it. Some of it comes with it, and you can root for your team. You can dislike an opponent. You know, you can dislike whatever it is. Be a fan, but don't be a bad human being, right? Like
Mhm.
be a fan, but don't be a jerk. Like it's not that hard to not be a jerk. You know, I tell my children the same thing all the time, guys. Like, look, there's a way to be a fan, and there's a way to root for your team, and there's a way to get on opponents and coaches or whoever it may be. That you're not attacking them personally. You're not attacking them, you know, from racially. You're not attacking their sexual orientation. You're not attacking who they are as a person, right? But you can critique. Like that's part of the thing. We know it, right? We know it in all of our jobs, right? That's part of it. But it's not that hard to not be a jerk. It's not that hard to be respectful. And just continuing to be vocal about it, and continuing to make sure that we are propelling the right narratives about our game, continuing to make sure as media members that we're covering the right narratives, that we're not allowing the trolls to create the news, and taking ownership and accountability of that as well.
I mean, mic drop. So well said. I couldn't support that more. So I think that's a wonderful way to finish this interview. And I truly appreciate anytime I get to just kick it with you and talk hoops, learn. I'm just literally, I should be like taking notes. But I feel like, you know, this is a very important time in women's hoops, an exciting time for the Indiana Fever. And I'm so glad you're at the helm of it. And I wish you the best of luck,
I
Steph.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for the time.